Good day, family. My name is Momer Fernandez. I had this experience on July 2022. When I got to campus, it didn't take long for me to connect with a group of friends. They seemed fun, lively, and full of energy, but as time went on, I realized something was missing from their lives. There was no sense of reverence or fear of God in anything they did. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured we were all just young, trying to enjoy life, but their carefree attitude towards spiritual matters started to influence me in ways I never expected. Before long, I found myself getting caught up in things I never imagined I would do. We spent our days skipping classes, attending wild parties, and staying out late. Drinking, casual hookups, and reckless behavior became the norm. It was like we were living for the thrill of the moment, completely forgetting the values we were raised with. I knew deep down that the path I was on wasn't right, but I convinced myself that everyone else was doing it, so it couldn't be that bad. Looking back now, I can see how their influence gradually pushed me further away from God, and I let it happen without much resistance. The wild acts we engaged in became my new normal, and the lines between right and wrong started to blur. It wasn't long before the cracks started to show in our so-called friendship. One of my friends, Sarah, had a temper like no one I'd ever met before. She could go from laughing to screaming in a matter of seconds, and it always felt like walking on eggshells around her. The smallest things could set her off, and most of us tried to avoid arguments with her, but one day things went too far. It started as a harmless conversation in the kitchen. We were all gathered there, cooking and chatting like we usually did, but something I said must have rubbed Sarah the wrong way. Her face changed instantly, and before I knew it, we were arguing. At first, it was just a few heated words, but as usual, her anger escalated quickly. I tried to defuse the situation, but Sarah wasn't having it. She was in one of her moods, and there was no stopping her. I don't want to get into all the details of what the fight was about. It's something I'd rather keep private, but what I can say is that it wasn't worth the trouble that followed. We were in the middle of cooking, and I was just trying to get the meal done. But Sarah's anger was boiling over, and the kitchen was the last place for such a confrontation. I was standing by the stove, stirring the pot when things escalated out of control. Sarah was still shouting, and the next thing I knew, she shoved me hard. I stumbled back, my heart racing. At that moment, a wave of panic hit me. I tried to calm her down, stepping away from the stove, but she was too far gone in her rage to hear me. Suddenly, before I could react, Sarah pushed me again, and I fell backward, closer to the stove. My head jerked, and I smelled something burning. It was my hair. The new hair I'd just made, now on fire. My scalp stung as flames danced at the ends of my hair, and in the chaos, I tried to slap it out, but it was no use. The panic in me grew, but Sarah just stood there for a second, her eyes wide with shock. She ran out of the kitchen without a second thought, leaving me to fight the fire alone. I was trying to think, trying to do something, but the flames were spreading faster than I could react. I was surrounded by confusion. My hair was burning, my clothes catching fire, and I couldn't make sense of anything. I reached for something, anything, to stop the fire, but it was too late. The flames grew out of control, igniting everything in their path. The curtains, the wooden cabinets, even the oil splattering from the stove. Before I knew it, the room was completely engulfed in flames. What started as a simple argument had turned into a nightmare, and I was at the center of it, with fire consuming everything around me. The heat was unbearable, and the thick smoke made it hard to breathe. My vision was starting to blur, and I could feel the flames all over my skin. I was screaming, but I couldn't even hear my own voice over the roaring fire. It was then that I heard voices, distant at first but growing louder. Through the smoke, I saw the shapes of men bursting into the kitchen. I don't know how they managed to reach me in time. Everything was happening so fast, but somehow these men fought their way through the fire, pulling me out of the burning room. My body was burnt and heavy, and I could barely move. The smoke was so thick that I couldn't catch my breath. I remember gasping, struggling to get any air, but it felt like my lungs were shutting down. The heat, the smoke, the pain, it was all too much. As they carried me out, I felt my consciousness slipping away. The suffocation was overwhelming, and the world around me began to fade. My body was giving up, and so was I. The pain was more than I could bear, and in those final moments, I surrendered to it. Everything went dark, and I let go. The next thing I knew, I was outside my body, floating above the chaos. I could see everything, the kitchen still ablaze, my lifeless body lying on the floor, charred and broken. It was surreal, like I was watching a movie of my own life. I felt strangely detached, as if the pain I had just experienced no longer mattered. But what caught my attention next sent a chill through me. The room, now smoldering, was filled with dark, shadowy figures, demons. They were everywhere, moving through the smoke like they had always belonged there. Their presence was terrifying, yet I couldn't move or escape. One of them, larger and more wicked than the others, turned to me and spoke. "We've been waiting for you for the last 4 years." A cold realization hit me like a wave. It all made sense, the reckless life I'd been living since I got to university, the wild acts, the way I'd strayed so far from God. Each mistake, each sin had been attracting these demons, keeping them close to me, waiting for the moment I would fall. I understood, in that instant, that my actions over the past 4 years had been drawing them nearer and nearer to this moment. Every unholy thing I had done, every time I ignored the voice of God, it all added up. I barely had time to process the demon's words before everything changed. In an instant, I was dragged into a place of unimaginable horror, hell. The very moment I arrived, the torment began. There was no delay, no easing into it. The pain was immediate, searing through me like nothing I'd ever felt before. The heat, the agony, it was all too much. I wanted to scream, but my voice was lost in the overwhelming suffering that consumed me. As I looked around, trying to make sense of where I was, I found myself in a section of hell that left me completely shocked. It was different from the fiery pits I expected. Here, souls were being tormented in a specific way, and the demons kept mocking them, calling them late Christians. These were people who had once known Christ, had once followed him, but had turned away. I listened closely and realized that their sin had started with something as simple as the music they listened to, the songs they thought were harmless. The demons taunted them, showing how these souls had once enjoyed music that wasn't inspired by God. They had sung these songs so often, so casually, that they opened themselves up to all kinds of sinful behavior, unknowingly drifting away from their faith. They had chosen entertainment over God, and now they were paying the price. The torment was relentless. The demons separated these souls, mocking them for having known salvation but throwing it away, unlike others who had never even had a chance to know Christ. The regret in their eyes was unbearable to witness. As I listened, it became painfully clear that their torment was tied to the worldly songs they had embraced. Each note they had sung in life now felt like a dagger, twisting deeper into their souls. The demons relished in this agony, reminding them of how those catchy tunes had led them astray. They had let these songs seep into their hearts, slowly eroding their faith until they had become complacent in their sin. I could hear the melodies of those familiar songs through the cries of anguish around me. "You raise me up. He lives in you. Hallelujah." I recognized one of us and a Let It Be, songs that had once been part of my life too. The souls sang these tunes endlessly. The demons, gloating over their successful deceptions, were eager for more souls to join their ranks. "More are coming," they taunted, their voices dripping with disdain. Every day, more souls turn their backs on the light, drawn in by the same allure that brought you here. They think they're safe, but they're on a path that leads straight to us. Suddenly, I was back to consciousness, but it felt disorienting. I was in a hospital bed. I could see bandages covering my arms and face. When the doctors came in, their expressions were grave. They spoke in hushed tones about the extent of the damage, the burns that had scorched my skin, the injuries that left them uncertain about my future. For the next year, my life became a constant battle against the aftermath of that tragic day. The physical pain was only part of the struggle, it was the emotional scars that cut even deeper. Every mirror reflected not just the scars but the reminders of who I had once been. The world outside moved on while I felt trapped in a nightmare, grappling with the horror of what I had experienced in hell and the reality of my new life. The mockery I endured was another layer of suffering. People whispered, pointed, and sometimes openly laughed at my appearance, unaware of the battle I was fighting. It was as if my scars were an invitation for ridicule, and I often found myself retreating into solitude, hiding from a world that seemed to have no compassion. Even those who once called themselves friends distanced themselves, leaving me to confront my new life alone. The limitations imposed by my injuries were numerous. I struggled with tasks I once found easy, and simple activities became monumental challenges. I felt trapped in a body that no longer felt like my own, burdened by the memories of what had been lost. The escape of my friend, the one who had been with me in the chaos, added to my pain. She vanished after the incident, evading the consequences of her actions. The police were unable to track her down, and knowing she was free, while I was left to deal with the aftermath, felt like salt in an open wound. I often replayed that day in my mind, wondering if things would have been different if she had stood by me instead of running away. The anger and betrayal festered within me, making it difficult to find peace in my recovery. While I fought to rebuild my life, the absence of accountability for her actions loomed large. But after I have my life to Jesus, my life took a new turn, and the love I received among believers really encouraged me and brought me this far. One truth stands out starkly: be careful who you call friends. The people you surround yourself with can profoundly impact your life, for better or worse. My experience taught me that not everyone who enters your life has your best interests at heart. The ones who led me down a path of destruction and chaos ultimately abandoned me when I needed support the most. It's crucial to choose friends who uplift you, who encourage you to walk in the light rather than drag you into darkness. Additionally, I urge everyone to consider the music they listen to. The power of music is undeniable. It can influence thoughts, feelings, and even actions. My experience in hell revealed to me how easily we can be ensnared by songs that may seem harmless but carry messages contrary to the teachings of God. The melodies that once filled my heart with joy now echo with regret, reminding me of the choices I made that led to my downfall. I encourage you to choose edifying songs that nourish your spirit. Seek out music that brings you closer to God, that inspires righteousness and purity. Let your playlist reflect values that honor Him, and be mindful of the messages that permeate your heart. In this world filled with distractions, it's essential to build a foundation on things that lead to life, hope, and truth. Choose wisely, and let your choices pave the way for a brighter, more fulfilling life. Thank you for staying to the end of this experience. Save a soul by sharing this video with your friends and families, so that they will be saved from the path of hell. Subscribe to our channel if you have not, to remain updated whenever we share another experience that is being sent to us. Thank you.